Thank you all for joining us. Just a reminder, please keep yourself on mute and then unmute yourself when you speak up or ask a question. Super excited for tonight as we get into this panel on hiring process, experience, and advice. Our three speakers are all accomplished and come from different backgrounds with various professional experiences. So it's going to be a great session. The one thing I want to say as we get into this is I think it's important for us to recognize that there isn't always like a right answer to some of these questions. And hopefully we get different points of views and responses from our three panelists tonight. And we should expect this and value this. And then it's on you to use what you learned tonight or take the applicable parts for you and your situation to best help yourself in your future, when you're in the midst of applying or interviewing for jobs. So we have 8 predetermined questions that we're going to start with, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A before we wrap it up. And as we have some new people with us tonight, I want to quickly describe the vision of C3. Continuous Coaching Collaborative is defined by where the name intersects. Continuous, we're all lifelong learners. We're all on a constant quest to add to our knowledge and expertise. Coaching, it doesn't matter what role you have by title, but we're all coaches in different ways, in some way, shape, or form. So the teaching aspect is what we all love to do. And then collaborative, we are all at our best when we work with and learn from others. So when you put these 3 elements together, we're here to become the best coach possible by continuously learning with and from others. So we'll get into a lot of this tonight. Ryan, I'm going to have you quickly introduce our first speaker, and then Tommy, you'll introduce the other 2.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonah. And thanks again for putting this together, for organizing another terrific panel for all of us. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to introduce one of our panelists, Andy Birdsong. Andy's in his 2nd year as the assistant general manager for the Brooklyn Nets. Before joining the Nets organization, he spent 8 years in the front office with both the San Antonio Spurs and the Atlanta Hawks, where he's worked in a variety of roles within each team's front office. Prior to coming to the NBA, Birdie spent time as a graduate assistant at Florida State under head coach Leonard Hamilton. And probably more importantly, he's a Minnesota native, a graduate of Bethel University, which is a proud member of the mighty Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. Personally, I've known Andy basically since he was a senior in high school, and he was coaching a local AAU program, which ended up having a couple players that I coached, first at Augsburg College and then eventually at my current role at Carleton College. And people will occasionally ask me now, how has Andy been able to rise so quickly through the ranks of professional basketball? And typically my response is that, in my opinion, there's a couple things, a couple characteristics that Andy has that are distinguishing characteristics that separate him. First, he's one of the most loyal people that I know, both in coaching and in the basketball profession and in life. Number 2, he has exceptional people interpersonal skills, where he really has an ability to make people, almost everybody he comes into contact with, feel good about themselves. And basically he's meshed his loyalty, his interpersonal skills with a tremendous drive and work ethic to build himself into one of the top up and coming executives in pro sports, in my very humble opinion. He's built an unbelievable professional network. And one of the great joys for me is to see how he's developed and maintained a number of those relationships with a lot of our mutual connections, like Jonah, for example. So Andy, it's great to see you. Thanks again for taking the time to come on here and share with us at C3. We're looking forward to everything you have to share. And I'll kick it over to Tommy if you want to introduce our next panelist.
Thanks, Ryan. I will start with Felicia. I have been following and learning from Felicia from afar for the better part of like the last 10 years. She created a Step Up Symposium along with her husband, Johnny Allen, in around 2010. She was determined to help assistant coaches gain knowledge, discover coaching insights, and develop strategies, techniques to help them reach their full coaching potential. And folks, that's straight from their mission statement. I can tell you firsthand, they haven't come up short. Every spring since her first symposium, I would scour the internet waiting for the clinic notes to be released. I simply never had the funds to attend the symposium in person. what with travel in the hotel and being low budget at the time. But as one who has always been a continuous learner, it was always on my calendar to make sure that I got the notes and soaked up all the knowledge and information that she provided during her event. This past year with COVID, they made the events virtual, and there was no way in hell I was going to miss it. 10 years in the making to be part of the event, and I was not disappointed. To be honest, I got even more than I possibly could have expected from the event. I literally watched or listened to one of the videos because she provided the replays every day since it's happened earlier this spring. When we were first talking about this in CCC of having this conversation surrounding this topic, there was no way we could do justice to our CCC community without including Felicia as part of this discussion. I'm extremely eager for everyone to get the opportunity to learn from her, as I have been continuing to do for the last 10 years. Once again, thank you, Felicia, so much for making the time for us this evening. And then now on to Jamey Ventura, who, oh boy. In 2013, I was hired as the head coach for men's basketball and as the assistant athletic director at what's now known as Northern Vermont University. At the time, it was Johnson State College. To say I was excited to obviously receive my first opportunity to be a collegiate head coach is a massive understatement. It was unequivocally one of the greatest days of my life, no questions asked. However, as I sit here today introducing you to our final panelists of the evening, looking back on that day, it's not because I got my first shot at coaching that made it so special. It's because of the man who I was working for at the time and all he has done and meant to me starting on that day. So much so then that I didn't even know now. I can still remember interviewing with him driving back from a recruiting event. It was the academic camp in Brandeis. I was as an assistant at Bates. I was literally driving in the car and he was interviewing me on the phone, but was taking the time to type out my responses to the questions so he could provide the search committee word for word my answers to these questions. That snapshot in time speaks volumes as to the leader Jamey is. No stone is too big, no task is too small. It all matters, and there is a certain way it needs to be done to have the right people in the places on his team, and I emphasize people. I can't even put into words, and my apologies for that, but I won't have to, all that he has done for me. As the evening goes on, and you see and listen to Jamey firsthand, you will quickly come to understand why I unequivocally believe this statement to be true, that Jamey is one of the best leaders in the world of athletics, point blank, period. I have been so lucky and fortunate to have him as a part of my life over the last 8 years. And I'm even more excited for the opportunity for you all to have the chance to learn from him this evening. I know you do not like doing things like this, Jamey. I had to twist your arm to get you here. So a huge thank you in advance for being here this evening and imparting us all with your knowledge and expertise you have accumulated over the 15 plus years of athletic administration. Jonah, let's get things rolling.
Awesome. Thanks for those great introductions. Thanks to the three panelists for being here. The first question is this. When you're hiring, prior to the job being posted, what are you doing and why? So things like, how are you putting together a search committee? What's the job description? What are you thinking about for fit? Are you evaluating the previous 100 days leading up to the position being open? Are you creating a candidate pool? Are you always building a list, preparing for times like this? So whoever wants to jump up first, the floor is yours.
Go ahead and start. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really important. And we're a small institution, and we're Division III. You know, but we chose this institution for a reason, and we're an access institution for our students, and I truly believe we're an access institution for our coaches, and the ability to develop coaches to and Tommy will attest to this. Like when I hire a coach, I mean I'm honest with it. I tell him, I said, look, I don't expect you to retire here. If you want to, if you love it here, great. You know, we'll have you, but my part of my job is to get you ready for whatever that career ending goal or next step is. So to get to your question, Jonah, I'm formulating a search committee that's going to really get us different perspectives. So of course we have members of our athletic department on our search committee, but I make sure that we have members in other departments on campus that are a part of that committee as well. Because I mean, you'll know, and Tommy again can attest to, I mean, when you're a coach at the college level, especially at Division III, you're interacting with every department on campus. And so you have to learn how to have and how to build those relationships. And so when I form that search committee, I'm making sure that we have someone, you know, maybe from admissions, we have someone from academic services, there's someone from student life. You know, we want to make sure that our candidates are getting a flavor of what our campus is all about, but also we're not prying, but we're trying to learn as much about the candidate as we can. I mean, you hear all the time people talk about fit. Are they the right fit? Are they not the right fit? But I want to make sure that everyone in our athletic department can work with everyone else across our campus that we have to collaborate with. So that's an important piece for us. And I know I didn't answer all your questions, but I'll stop there because we have two other speakers.
I think the only thing I would add is in kind of the pro sport, like sports realm where we are always evaluating things, and sometimes timelines get accelerated in different ways. I would say that we always have to have contingencies because other people get jobs. People can call even when under contract and be asked for, and we can be left with a vacancy that isn't anticipated. And other times circumstances dictate that there's a vacancy because of results. And so I think one of my core responsibilities is to be evaluating things as we move forward in every department. And that goes from, coaching to trainers to performance team to PR to our front office. And so we have to have, it was something that Coach Ham actually taught me. He's like, look, every AD's got a list in their top drawer that if something were to happen, they're going to these 4 places to see if they could get someone in case something were to happen. And so we have those lists. We're always prepared. That doesn't mean you can get the person, but if you are going to make a change or if things are coming where a change is going to happen, we always say that you better know that you can get someone you want before that instance happens. Or when you have a vacancy and you don't have a list and you don't have a network that you're working from, that is really hard for me personally, because I believe the core relationship of GM, coach, owner is what drives a culture forward in professional sports, and it trickles down from there. And so we want to make sure that there's relationships amongst all those individuals.
I'll pass on this question since I'm not in a hiring position. I'm trying to get people hired as a sports agent. So I'll wait for another question, John.
Awesome. The next question, and maybe you can actually start with this one, but when the job is actually posted, now what? So when you're going for a job for the coach, not necessarily the hirer, but also the hirer, what are your recommendations for that coach when they're going through this process and right when the job is posted?
That's a great question. I think that, first of all, I'm envious of Nick in Lake Tahoe. I needed to say that before I said anything else. Second, I would say that when the job is posted, you immediately, it's almost like a recruiting gig. When you are recruiting a top player, you start to build a fence around that player and figure out points of connection. I think that's the very first thing you do. You look for who's connected and where and how and what access do you have to them. A lot of times people think that you have to be tight with people who work there or who may be connected with the AD. I found that mere acquaintances and loosely tied relationships are good enough to help you get your foot in the door. The next thing
The new internet might have taken a hit.
Andy or Jamey want to jump in?
Yeah, you're sorry. And John, your question goes back to once the job is posted, what's the best thing to do as a candidate?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two different things. So it was like this in college sports. It's a little bit like this in pro sports. Sometimes when the job is posted, there's already a candidate pool. And so kind of piggybacking on what Miss Allen was actually saying is I actually think the relationship that gets you in the door before the job is posted is probably something that matters a lot. And I think those relationships can be cyclical in 7 degrees of separation or whatever, meaning that just because, I may not know a candidate for a potential opening, somebody calling on their behalf and at least vouching for them and me trusting the person that I'm talking to immediately gives credence to the person that I'm going to then talk to about the actual position. That being said, we do post positions and we do take candidates directly from those positions. I do think that if you go into a search and you do, put your resume through the formal application process, making contact with somebody in the decision-making tree within that position is vital. And at least in our organization, we get hundreds and thousands of resumes for one position. And, people are searching through those. We have HR softwares that are pulling keywords and all that kind of stuff. But those that more often get the longest look are the people that we know personally or are connected to in some way. And we're trying to broaden our network all the time. I think that's why it's my responsibility to expand my circle of people all the time. Because if I just keep a small circle, well, I'm just going to hire the same type of person. And we want diverse candidates in every aspect from every walk of life. And so we need to be those that are in hiring decision-making capacity. It's their responsibility to widen their network and broaden their network to allow all those to come in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. And the network is important, right? But I'm going to tell you something that's really important, and that is your cover letter. I can tell you firsthand now, and I think I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think we're at our worst time in terms of candidates submitting resumes and submitting cover letters. I've gotten to the point where I have to read the resume first. If I read the cover letter first, I might rule out everyone in my candidate pool. And so I can't stress enough that you have to really do your homework. I say all the time, you have to be prepared. And what I mean by that is wherever you're applying, I don't care if it's college, if it's a different organization, if it's the pros, do your research on that organization and find out, look at their strategic plan, look at their goals, their initiatives. And then what you do is you take your experience that you have that match up with what some of the things that are in their plan or in their goals. And that's what you write about in your cover letter. So, I mean, I'll see cover letters now that, could be a paragraph, 2 paragraph. I don't care how long they are. There used to be the thing, it's got to be one page. Well, it depends on how long you've been working and what your experience is. But for me, you gotta catch my interest. I gotta know that you're really interested in my organization. If you want me to give you a look, I want to know that you're interested and not just applying to anything that's out there. So I want to know that you've been on our website. I want to know you've looked at what the strategic plan is. And then instead of just saying, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, you say, I see that you're looking for, and you pull this out of the job posting and you pull this out of the strategic plan. And you say, I see you're looking for a leader that can do X, Y, and Z. And then you talk about how you've met that already and how you can continue to do it for the organization. That's really how you have to build that cover letter, because as Andy just said, and he said thousands, at the college level, we'll post a full-time position and we can get 100, 200, resumes. So how are we going to separate through there? And that's going to draw the attention, whether they know you or not. You can get in that short pile if you actually showed that you know what they're looking for. So you read that job posting and actually carefully looked at the bullets that they put in there, because they took the time to craft that. They know what they're looking for, or at least they think they do. And so make sure you're addressing that in your cover letter, and make sure you know what their goals are and you tell them how you can help them reach those goals.
Can I piggyback on that 1 second, if possible? Jamey, I think another thing for, especially for those trying to expand their network, like a cover letter sometimes will actually even be like, you know, you can think of it as like an introduction. And sometimes when you're doing these introductions in person, I remember going to the Final Four. Like, for those of you in college basketball that haven't been to the Final Four, you have to go. One, because it's an incredible place to see the vast, like, sea of basketball, but then also it's like the most humbling thing in the world that you sit there and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of coaches, and you're like, this is so much bigger than I ever thought, and like I am a minnow in the ocean. But what I want to say is, like, your cover letter, like, at times can be an introduction to somebody as well, and you will not imagine like the amount of people that walk up to someone and are like, oh yeah, I could help you do this, I could help you do that. Like the cover letter of an introduction, sometimes when you are meeting someone, have a vested interest in who you're talking to, and know more about their organization, know about how their team has done, create commonality in those interactions, so that when you can follow up with a cover letter for a formal position, you're drawing on an experience of when you've met someone. There's so many people that ask, oh yeah, I have 15 minutes of your time? Sure, but like, I want to get something out of that 15 minutes as well. And not in like a selfish way, but I want to learn as well. Bring something to the table that's mutually beneficial for both of us. And I just was thinking of that as you were talking about having a cover letter that contains substance and shows that you cared enough to go and understand about our university, to be on our website and understand our strategic vision. I think you can do that as you meet people as well.
Felicia, you want to pick up where you left off? You there, Felicia?
She was just
Yes.
here.
I see the picture. Maybe it's frozen.
I just texted her as well.
Okay. Well, I just want to throw something in off of what both of you guys just said also. I think she just went out. But I think also a lot of times, even with everything that you said, it comes back to coaches or whatever you're applying for, is you knowing who you are as a person and what you want. And because if you are applying to everything, not everything is going to fit you. And yeah, we all want a job, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, like, you know, we have to know what we fit into as well as someone going for the job, just as much as like the people hiring. And Jamey, I know, and Joan, I know I got my question coming up, but Jamey, I can't pass by without you to the follow-up with how you were saying about looking at the job description as a candidate, this, that, and the other thing. How much time, energy, and effort are people really putting into creating the job description that they really truly need for the position? Because like, I think sometimes what happens is the job descriptions are written for skills when really people do the work. You know, could you just maybe dive in and elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Tommy. And I think it's up to the hiring manager to really look at that. A lot of times what happens is, you know, the job description has existed in the organization for a while, right? And then as it goes vacant, they just say, oh, hey, let's pull this job description. They don't even really look at it. They just post it again. And so it's up to the hiring manager to really think through, you know, what are the skill sets that we need for this position? Learn from your last coach or the last person that was in that spot. What did they do really well that might not be in that job description, and allow them to move on to great things? And so make sure, hey, that was a great value to our organization. Let's add this into the job description. And then, you know, also just identifying, you know, what is in there. I mean, things change, right? The job might change a little bit too. And so what is in there that really isn't as important, or has moved on to somebody else or something along those lines. And so for me, it's really important to look through that posting and think about, what do I really need to bring this program to the next level, and make sure I have that in the posting.
I would like to jump in. First of all, I told you that this was a Halloween experience, truly. It's a trick or treat, whether or not I'm going to be with y'all tonight. So I am sorry. Last time I will apologize. If it happens again, I'll just catch you another time, Tommy. But I want to say about the job description thing. The job description for me is just like somebody saying it's cold outside, I need a coat. Any coat will do, because any any coat will do. It's cotton, it's polyester, it's a little bit of, down feather. That job description means absolutely nothing, because any old coat will do. Here's what's not in the job description that they're looking for: character. I've never seen a job description that says, I'm looking for a person with character. But I was on a conference call, a Zoom call yesterday with 5 athletic directors. And they said the number one thing that they look for in a candidate is character first, competence second. The other thing that they said that they are looking for is a person's capacity to communicate to administrators, to a fan base, to student athletes, to people in a community. I've never seen that in a job description, but I know that that's one of the things that they're looking for. Charisma, have you ever seen it in a job description? But I know that if they're hiring a head coach or an athletic director, they want somebody who can move the room. When you move in, everybody knows that you showed up. When have you ever seen that in a job description? So I think you put a lot of weight on job descriptions that mean nothing, because anybody can wear a coat. The question is, they're looking for the right fit, and the right fit is not going to be found in that job description.
Great point.
That's great. Tommy, you want to take the next 2 questions?
Yeah, definitely. So choices are easy, but deciding is hard. When you go from the executive, what are some skills?
Tommy, can you repeat? You just cut out.
Cut out. I'm in the mountains, folks. I'm sorry.
Halloween weekend for everyone.
Yeah, I know. Maybe we should just do this tomorrow night, Jonah. I'll start over, folks. I'm sorry. I was saying basically choices are easy and deciding is hard. So when you go from the second chair to the first chair, in my opinion, you go from being like a manager more to being an executive. What are some of the skills that change by position? Like an example could be delegating effectively, that one sitting in the second seat can and should be working on in advance of being in that first seat. And how can one's current supervisor or head coach or administrator, whoever's above them, help to build those necessary skills? Felicia, how about you go before the goblins come back over there?
You know what, that's fine. And I think that's a great question. Actually, one of my clients is the associate head coach at the University of Kentucky for the women's basketball program. And her head coach, Matthew Mitchell, is out right now for medical reasons. Had no idea that this was going to transpire. So it wasn't like she had an opportunity to get prepped. It happened and she had to be ready. So I talked to her last week while I waited 2 hours at the drive-through state fair in Columbia, South Carolina. And one of the things that she said, I immediately went from just a person who made suggestions and thought that I was never heard to the person who had to make all of the decisions. Making all of the decisions is one of the most exhaustive things that I've ever done. She said the other thing is that time management. I used to have all the time in the world. I could plan my day out and I could stick to the plan. Moving one chair over, 12 inches over. She said, my day goes sideways, upside down, and zigzag and across the world, because you cannot always anticipate the kinds of things that are going to come your way. And so she said, you have to learn to be so much more flexible. The other thing she said is that relationship currency has a much higher premium when you move over 12 inches. And the idea is that the relationship that you had with the player becomes something completely and totally different relative to how you have to communicate with them. She said that, you know, one of my favorite kids on the team, I had to suspend. And then I had to do it with a straight face. And, you know, before I would have been the one rubbing her on the back, patting her on the head and telling her everything was going to be okay. But now I was in a position where it's about a life lesson. And it wasn't just that kid, but every other kid who had an opportunity to learn based on the choice or decision that I needed to be able to make and stick to. The other thing that's different about moving over is the level of preparation and how you can't doubt or question yourself. She said, but being open to allowing the people who are around you to use their skill set and to be able to be a support. Don't act like you know everything. And when you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to say you don't know, and lean on the people who are around you to help you grow. Give yourself grace and allow yourself to grow, because every mistake you made is nothing more than an opportunity to prepare to be great.
Jamey or Andy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the biggest things, I mean, is delegating. You kind of hit it on the head. I think it's the responsibility of the person that's your superior to allow you to take things off their plate to help free them up so that they can operate at their highest capacity. I think for me, you know, a major growth for me personally was just that, because I started my career in a role that was just like an operator or an executor or just like a doer. Like it was like, I'm just going to go and execute at the highest level possible, and repeatedly over and over and over and over again to gain trust so that I could operate at another tier and then do it over and over and over and over and over again. And then you get to a plane that's like, uh-oh, now I get pulled in so many other directions that I can't get my core competency job, like core roles done every day. So I need someone else to help me with that. And that was growth for me, to be able to delegate and then trust that the work was being done. And then the next layer of that came in the selection of who we were hiring to do those jobs. And so they had to be people that I could trust personally, that they could be a proxy in a meeting, that they could operate at a level and do the work where I wouldn't have to go back and, you know, look at it again and do it all over again. So that was growth for me, because I started in a role that was just operate and execute. All right, see ball, hit ball. All right, great, I did that. Now I'm going to move on to the next thing. Well, now as a manager or as an executive, you have to kind of sit back and say, okay, great. How did they do this? Why did they make this decision? You know, evaluate the process with them and trust that the process that we've decided on together is going to yield an outcome that we can stand behind. And so I would just say that, you know, being able to delegate, being able to, you know, in the selection process, selecting and hiring people that you believe in, that you trust, and that you know that you can work with is major, because they're going to be doing the lion's share at times of the day-to-day heavy lifting. And so you have to trust that how you're building your process, it will yield an outcome that you all can believe in.
I'll just add two quick on both sides. So when you are that second person in charge, you know, you want to be involved, and you want to know what's going on, and hopefully the supervisor is including you in what's happening within the organization, within the department. But also don't be afraid to go to your supervisor and say, hey, I want to learn more about whatever piece, you know, I want to learn more about the budget. I want to learn more about whatever. I mean, you need to, on your own, start to work to develop those skills. And if your supervisor isn't working with you or coming directly to you about a certain topic that you think you need to get to that next level, you know, go ask, go develop that relationship as well. But on the supervisor side, I mean, that is important. Like, you know, a big part of my job is developing the staff around me. We're only going to be a great organization, a great athletic department, if I have the creative ideas of everyone that's working with me. And so that is part of my job, is I have to make sure that they're involved. They know what we're doing. They know why we're making decisions that might be outside of just the one sport they're coaching or whatever it is. So, you know, as Felicia said, when, you know, if I were to get sick, or if I'm, you know, you got to be ready, and you want to be ready. You want to have that confidence and know like, hey, I got this when it is your time. So those are two things I'd add.
Hey,
Jamie, if you
Jamie,
would
I
have
want
gotten
to jump
sick,
in. Tommy, I
or
want to jump
go
in
ahead,
and
go
say
ahead.
this about preparation and being ready for the moment. So I think it's really critical that right now, especially during this particular COVID season, this is a season of learning and evolving and growing. And I would really be taking advantage of that. That being said, I think that each of you probably know 3 skills that you probably need to be able to expand or grow or develop. In my opinion, if I were you, I would develop every month between now and March a special project. And if the project doesn't come to me, I need to go find it. And I would be specific relative to the skill set that I was going to develop. And I would find out from my coach, my head coach particularly, or athletic director, or someone else, where I might be able to gain some experience in that particular area. If it's not with your program, then I think that I probably would figure out virtually if there was an opportunity for me to be able to grow. When you come out of COVID, I think I heard somebody said, don't just go through COVID, grow through COVID. At the end of the COVID season, you should be able to identify 3 ways that you were able to grow that are setup moves for your next job, your next gig, or the next position that you're going to be able to obtain. You're never going to get the time back that we have right now. I would be intentional about taking advantage of it. Nor will you have access to the people that you have. Andy Birdsong probably would not be available October 30th if the NBA season was getting ready to get started. But he's available now, and other people just like him and Jamey, and I would take advantage of that.
Well said again. And Jamie, I just have to backtrack. If you would have gotten sick when I was at Johnson, I would not have been ready. I would have been calling your ass wherever you were in that sick bed saying, I need some help, just for the official record. Oh boy. My last question before we turn it over to Ryan is, what is one experience that has made you change or tweak your approach to hiring? Or Felicia, you can tweak it for how you do it. What's something that you've changed or tweaked through going through the hiring process on your end as well? Like, for example, maybe it was a lesson you learned or a surprise that happened in a process, and you, from that point forward, change something or tweak something with your processes. Jamie, you jump it off for us.
Me, I'm gonna say that
Okay,
I've worked with a lot of coaches that are trying to get jobs. So I talk to a lot of search firm people or a lot of athletic directors. I think that I'm kind of like Missouri. I'm the show me state. What I found is that a lot of people now don't just want to hear you talk about it. They want you to show them. So either you're going to show them in terms of when you come on the interview, they want to actually see you do what you say you can do. Or the other option is when you go into the interview, you should have already done your homework. So you should be able to put something in front of them that actually demonstrates your capacity to deliver. And the other thing that I would say that would be really important as I begin to think about the process now, a lot of people are hiring people based on their relationship with someone that they know and trust. That's how they begin to narrow their list down. If you have not built your success team in a way that you have more than one mentor, or if you don't have more than one sponsor, then you could end up being the best kept secret in this industry. I think that you need to cast your net wide. Cast your net wide. So what I mean by that is, I think that it is very important in terms of how I'm watching people hire. They are really trusting these search firm guys, and they are also trusting the people that you work with who may not be on your reference list. I have found that people are calling people that you don't list on your reference list, who should be obvious people that should be there, but who you didn't select. So I would just make sure that whatever bridges that have been burned, I would go back during this COVID season, and I would repair some of the damage, if there is damage that has ever been done.
Jamey or Andy, anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in from the hiring side. You know, I started to learn, you know, I talked earlier about making sure the search committee that we put together was diverse. It wasn't just within an athletic department, and we were getting other key administrators and personnel that worked across campus that the coach would interact with once they're there. But what I started to learn is, you know, I started to see a lot that if I wasn't clear as the hiring manager in saying, hey, what really is the skill set, not skill set, but as Felicia was saying earlier, in terms of the characteristics that we want in this person that we're hiring. And if I don't make that clear to the search committee as well, I feel like we have failed at times in not really identifying the true gems in the candidate pool that we had. And so, you know, that's something that I've learned, and we're much more strategic now to make sure that we're not missing some really dynamic candidates in our pool, because we just get into the, you know, again, you just say, well, they're not the right fit for here. Well, we got to make sure we're challenging that ourselves, because there's some dynamic candidates that may not have matched up with who we had before or what is written on the job description. But if we take the time and dig a little bit deeper, and again, as Felicia said, the show me piece, if they're showing that to us in a cover letter or when they come interview, you know, we got to pay attention to that. So that would be my thing on the hiring side. And so as the person that's interviewing, you know, I feel like I've been there, and maybe a lot of you have been there as well, where you know, you left that interview feeling that you gave it your all and you were prepared and you did a really, really good job, and they didn't hire you. And I've seen some people that just destroys you, and all of a sudden you just say, oh, I got to read through everything that I'm doing. I got to try and say what I think they want me to say. Instead, and Tommy, you said right at the beginning, you got to be true to yourself too. And sometimes it isn't a right match. You know, it's just like recruiting. You know, it's not always the right match. And so, you know, pay attention to what you could have answered better, like debrief and process that. And but sometimes you did a lot of things really well. Keep building off of that, and just continue to tweak to just make yourself a better candidate.
I think the two things that I would just piggyback on that have already been talked about. I think one, you know, the idea of when you come in for an interview, something that we have changed in our own process is, you know, we are going to pressure test you in the interview, and we are going to make sure that whatever you say you can do, you're going to do it. And so if you're a coach and you say you can develop somebody and get on the court and play and do everything like that, show us. I can have as many references as possible tell me you can do something, but let's see you do it. And then within that, we are purposely going to screw things up in the interview. We want to pressure test you. We want to see if you get off kilter, how do you react? You know, in our organization, we are following you from the minute we pick you up. So if you make it to an interview, the person that picks you up in the car, and this goes for players too. So if we're doing a draft interview, it's the exact same thing. But from the moment you get off the plane, we know the person. We will talk to the gate agent. Literally, we will talk to the gate agent. We will talk to the person that drives you back. We will go, we will make sure that who you are to us is exactly who you are to everybody else. So we're going to pressure test you in an interview. So I would just say those that end up going on site, maybe you never know. An organization might be watching you in different ways, and they might be. And then also be prepared to whatever you've told them you can do and do it at an elite level when you're there. And then so that's from a procedural standpoint. And then as far as the network goes, I mean, Miss Allen said it again, like those that have a personal connection to those that are making the decision, oftentimes like that helps you get in the door. That's just the nature of how it's been. But that being said, to diversify your network at this time, in this time, allows you to open those doors. It's really important. I mean, I could say, like, you guys may have seen the people we hired. The people we hired most recently in our coaching search, like Sean Marks, our GM, played with Steve 20 years ago. And like the running joke is like, well, why did you pick Steve Nash? Well, they 20 years ago wanted to run a team together. And they just said, okay, yeah, like this is a good time to do it. And then we went and hired the coach that was the guy above them to be his assistant. And we hired another teammate. And so it's kind of like, it's just an organic process as we go. And we went through every iteration of a coaching staff you could. And I had a friend of mine that's in a coaching search right now, and we're talking about staffs. He's like, you know what? It's a recipe. This is not like building a staff and building a coaching staff or a front office at times. It's a recipe. It's not a list. Meaning like you have to be able to add a little salt and pepper here, add a little garlic there. You have to be able to find the right characteristics of people that fit to make it all work. Not just, oh, the list says it's X, Y, and Z. That's not how you think. That's how the real world works at the end of the day. And so I would just keep that in mind as you're going. Like, what can you add to the process? What can you add to that place that's going to make the whole better?
You want me to take the next question, Jonah?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Before I do that, I do want to add, first of all, there's some tremendous content that each of you has shared here tonight. There's a couple themes, I think, for me that I've wandered through and that have been touched on. And Birdie, you kind of touched on this a little bit with the Final Four. And for me, it's always, for probably the last like 10 years, I've thought more about, essentially that experience there. And my question has always been, this is not my question, but like as a theme is what, and you guys have touched on this, you all have touched on this a number of times, but when I go to the Final Four, I see 750 coaches that look like me, and that have the same, when I say that, I mean, that have the same background as me, that, that are so similar. And so the question about how do you differentiate, how do us as coaches, how do we differentiate ourselves? Obviously the connections and those pieces, but different ways throughout that process. That's really tremendous. And then Felicia, you talked about the example with, I think it's the associate head coach at Kentucky, your client. And, I think for me, 5 years ago, I thought I was the best Division III assistant in the country. Nobody could touch me. I was the best recruiter. I was the best, best this, that, whatever. Right. And now today I think about, in my role as an associate head coach, never 1 second have been a head coach. I think about how fortunate I am to have had the time and the ability to make the mistakes that I have, and to not essentially be penalized for that, or just to learn from all that. So I think that's just tremendous perspective that you were able to offer. So my question, or, one of the questions here is, and Andy, you kind of touched on this a little bit too, but going for a head coaching job, essentially, how do you show value in your capabilities as a head coach in these two scenarios? So somebody like myself as as assistant coach, somewhat successful with no head coaching experience, and then also previous head coaching experience that one might deem as unsuccessful, with a losing record, etc. What is your opinion? What is your perspective on each of those scenarios?
I mean, I could take that as a hypothetical. Hey, there's a coach that wants to be a candidate for a position that's been unsuccessful at a play. Like, it didn't work in one place, but why is it going to work in another? And then at the same time, there's a candidate that doesn't have this experience, and why would you hire them? I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but for us, it literally comes down to, okay, how do we know them? Why do we know them? And then what values do they carry within them that are values transfers for our organization? We select and say no to based on values. And everyone wants to talk about culture and all the buzzword of culture. Like, to us, culture is your values lived out. And so we have a core set of values in our organization that we're going to screen every person from. And it wouldn't matter if you're a D3 coach from Minnesota that nobody may or may not know, Ryan. Like, if you submit it and you get to us and get it in front of us and you make contact with us, we are going to vet you for your values. And then if you can move forward in the position, you move forward in the position. And that goes for the coach that may not have been successful somewhere else. Like, if their values fit ours, we are going to put you through the lens of, okay, could you do the job? Yes or no. And I know can you make contact? That's it. For us at this level, it literally is that. We're going to go through a G League head coaching search right now. And the candidates that we're talking to are as diverse as you could get, from international to ex-player to, someone that would be considered a lower division coach in Europe to a D3 coach to anybody. But like, we are looking at every candidate, and all is based on those that we trust giving us names and then putting them through the first filter of our values and finding out if that fits or not. That's how it works for us personally.
Yeah, I think that's right on, Andy. And I mentioned earlier, and I think the first or second question, that's what I was getting at in terms of looking at that campus's strategic plan, or the department or the program's goals and values. And we got to know that you know what you're getting into. So as we've all said, you have to be prepared once you get in. So once you get past that, you get in the door, you got to show us that you've done your homework on what we're trying to be. And number two, in your question of, what if you were at a spot where you didn't win? I think sometimes we all want to win, right? But sometimes we can't afford to lose our confidence. And so you may have had to lose and see. I mean, you can look at any NBA team, any NBA, the NBA league, the NFL, the whatever. I mean, you have professional athletes on every single team that, were standouts in college, or, skipped college and went right to the pros. And I mean, they are very talented athletes, but you still have many teams that don't rise to the top, that lose, and coaches turn over. And so, but you've also seen that coach that didn't have success in one spot, but then got to another. And whether it was the relationships they built within that program or within those players, that then all of a sudden they've flourished, so definitely learn when you're struggling. And what is it? What is it that you haven't been as successful as you want to be, and know that, right? And how are you going to change? How are you going to fix that? And when you're interviewing, you still got to interview with confidence, right? They brought you in there. They already know that you didn't have a winning record where you were, but they brought you in there, right? So you're already in there, and they're interested in you. You've got to have that confidence. You've got to show them that you know what their organization is about. And then you got to show them how you're going to build that program there. So you got in the door, have that confidence, and go after it.
Yeah, I really like both of those responses from Andy and from Jamey. I think that relative to what you ask, if I'm an assistant coach, how do I get that shot? This may sound really simple, but every head coach in America, at least most of them, other than Steve Nash, they were an assistant before they were a head coach. They were an assistant. Most of them were an assistant before they were a head coach. And if they were not an assistant before a head coach, it goes back to something that is premium, relationship currency. There was trust there that said, without him ever having to call a play, I trust you that when the moment comes, Steve Kerr, that you're going to be able to do it, because other people will trust you, and you have the sort of persona that will make people buy whatever it is that you're selling, whatever you've packaged, and they believe that you can deliver based on your track record of success. Your track record of success is your experience. The other thing is, you said, what if I was a losing head coach? It's not just that you lost, it's how did you lose? I love the whole pressure test thing, Andy. It's not just that you lost, it's how did you lose? Cliff Kingsbury got fired at Texas Tech, took a job at USC, and before they could play a game, he's the head coach of the Arizona. How do you get fired at Texas Tech? I didn't say Texas. I said Texas Tech. I didn't say Texas A&M. I said Texas Tech. He got fired from Texas Tech. Who even wants to live there? And now he's living in Arizona. You know why? Because it wasn't that he lost. It was how he coached the game that got him that next job. People are going to look at your skill set. I was talking to Eddie Fogler, who does a lot of these searches and stuff. And he said, Felicia, I'm never afraid to hire a guy who wasn't successful in another place. Because it's like Andy said, that person is bringing some skills to the table that a newbie head coach has not had an opportunity to think about, contemplate, or experience. So rather than focusing on failing, I would focus on what are the learnings and what are the takeaways in that experience. And then I go back to this. You got to be able to sell ice to an Eskimo. You have to have the capacity to sell what you've learned and be able to demonstrate that you can turn it around based on those learnings.
That's great. Kirsch, let's
I was just going to add real quick. That's fantastic. I appreciate that. And Felicia, I really appreciate too what you said earlier about, essentially as far as the example of COVID in the next couple months and how coaches the improvement that's necessary during this time. That's tremendous. So thank you all, and I'll kick it to Zach for the next question.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks guys for your time again. One of the most important responsibilities, I think, in leaders that gets often overlooked, especially in coaching, is developing those under your leadership. Walk us through the processes and procedures you guys have in place and follow that have been impactful in the development of the successful leaders you have had a hand in developing. Anyone want to start us off?
So I do professional development for coaches. I think Tommy said that Johnny and I have been hosting a professional development symposium since, I guess, 2010. This past year, we actually, Andy, started an assistant coaches 2 years ago. We had COVID this year, started an assistant coaches Hall of Fame. And Stan Jones from Florida State was in our first class. Coach Ham came to production and almost stole the show.
That's my family.
It was hilarious, Andy. Coach Ham wanted to go on the stage and everything. And then Stan said, yeah, did he just take my 3 minutes? It was classic. It was classic. But what I love about them is that everybody showed up and you really got to see the sense of family that's demonstrated there. Dennis Gates, who's now the head coach at Cleveland State, was there the year before. And when Dennis won Coach of the Year at Cleveland State, that day he called Johnny and I, and he said, I just had to call to thank y'all for putting me in a position to land this job and for giving me a platform to be able to showcase what I can do and sell me. So I think that I forgot the question talking about Coach Ham. Tell me the question again.
Just asking about kind of the processes and procedures you have in place.
Oh, mentoring. Okay, so that's why I went to Coach Ham. Yep. He's one of the best mentors in the business. He is one of the best mentors in the building. And when he, the difference between a mentor and an advisor is somebody who can give you, you can ask deliberate and straight questions. It might be a one-off here, a one-off there. But a mentor is somebody who is going to take the time to invest in you. That means that they can know the good, the bad, and the ugly about you and remain indifferent to all of it and make your development the most important thing. A mentor is a person who will give you tailor-made advice. Andy knows that Stan Jones is different than C.Y. Young, is different than Dennis Gates. The way that Coach Ham develops each one of them is very different. The expectations are different. The engagement is different, but they each have an opportunity to thrive in the lane that they're in. I think that I have found that the person who sponsors you, that relationship that you have that'll get you to the table, that person doesn't need to know the good, bad, and the ugly. They need to know the good, the good, the good, the great, and the good, because they're the person that's trying to get you there. I think that don't call a person a mentor who does not know you. That person is just an advisor. And I think sometimes we put the wrong labels on people. The mentor is someone who's going to download and deposit things in you based on what they've experienced, but they're going to do it in a customized way to help you understand how you might grow and learn. They're going to challenge you in the way that you think. And I think that they should be someone who'll help to smooth out some of the rough edges. That's the person you should be able to be vulnerable with and say, look, I don't know this. What do I need to do? I don't know them. How do I get to know them? How do I connect? How do I grow? It's about next level thinking with somebody who wants to provide next level custom-made advice for me. I don't know, Andy, was I on point with who Coach Ham is?
Yeah, for sure. I think the only thing, like the things I would add to this, I think I can speak to it personally, and then I can speak to it from like a managerial position, like the professional side of it as well. So I think professionally for me, I've had to, like, I choose to, in like when you hire somebody, you take a vested interest in their future, in their life, period. Like I, as a manager, take, like, if those that would work with me or alongside me, whatever, for me, however you want to say it, like, I care so much about them personally and professionally that I'm willing to do whatever it takes for their success. And at the same time, if I pour myself into them, I'm actually pouring myself into the nets. And I think that you just have to realize that, like, and it goes back to selection. You hire people that you care about, and you hire people that you hire people. Don't hire positions. Don't try to be like, oh, I'm going to be the best offensive coordinator in the world. Go be the best person in that can be the best offensive coordinator in the world. Go be like, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not to make money, not to be famous, not to do anything. Do it because it's the right thing. And then be really, really, really tactically and technically smart and sound, and you're going to be all right. For me, my mentors, you know, were people that I like casually and like ran into because of relationships with other people. And it was one of those things where it was like, I didn't go out seeking Coach Hamilton to be my mentor. It literally happened because I knew the GA that was there before me that I developed a relationship with, and he vouched for me to coach, and then Coach hired me without ever meeting him. And now I ended up with Coach Hamilton and the whole Florida State staff and as my mentors. It's just like, and I've never intended for them to be that, but because of how I lived my life in another way, I had the opportunity to be there. And so I would just tell you guys, and then the other thing is, me personally, like there's this concept that a friend of mine taught me, and it's something I really believe in. It's like live life in threes. And if I'm this person and this person's older than me and this person's younger than me, I'm this person, the older person is pulling me along and I want to grow with them. But at the same time, I'm pouring back into them. So for someone that's older than me, that's more experienced than I am, I'm being young and relevant and new ideas and ambitious and pushing them forward. So I'm underneath them, pushing them up as they keep pushing forward. And then along with that, I'm looking behind and bringing someone with me. And then if I can have somebody else do that same thing, I've now created a chain of movement towards something that we all want. And that's something that we all want, like that could be different for different people. Like some people it's money, some people it's fame, some people it's whatever. Well, I choose to push forward the mentor that I have there that's chasing the same thing I am. And for me personally, like that's people. I am motivated by people. Like, do I like basketball? Yeah. Could it go away tomorrow and me be okay? For sure. But if the people part of my job went away, I would be like, I would hate it. Like, then that's just me personally. Like, I would just hate it. And so I would just encourage you guys, find a way to live life in threes. And then at the same time, don't go out seeking being like, I need this person to be my mentor. It's not going to work out. No, like just treat people the same and see where you end up. I guess the other part I would say to that is you can't be afraid to ask someone to be your mentor once you get to know them. I think that was something like, I was like, man, this is going to be weird. I'm going to ask this person to be my mentor. It's just like asking, like when you're in middle school, you say, do you want to be my girlfriend? Like, how does this work? Like, it's just something weird like that. But I was intentional about that. I have personal and professional mentors that like are in my life to this day that are my checks and balances. And I truthfully believe that we are like, life is meant to be lived together. And that's just an example of that.
That's well said. And one thing that I do, and Tommy may have hated it or may have loved it, I don't know, but I made sure I no matter how busy my schedule was, I was still scheduling meetings with Tommy, with my other administrators, and really getting to know them as people, and what I already know what they're giving to our organization, but how can I help them enhance the skill sets that they want to learn to get them to that next spot. I mean, Tommy was at Little Johnson State College, and then he's back at Bates as an administrator, as an assistant AD, and now he's at Williams. And it's because Tommy had that time, and he invested to learn. And so I felt that as Tommy's supervisor, I needed to give Tommy that time and let him ask me questions. And another thing that I think my staff hates me for, but I think eventually appreciates it, is, when they came in my office to ask me a question on, how do you do this, or what should I do with this? They just wanted the answer, right? And I almost to a T, anytime somebody does that, I ask them a question back, because I want them to think about the process and how that's really how you're going to learn from that experience. And so as frustrating as that could have been for Tommy or my staff now, to me, that's allowing them that room to grow. And also if I build that trusting relationship, they know that if they do make a mistake or don't pull through on something, I'm not going to be in their office screaming at them. It's like, okay, how do we learn from that? What could we have done differently? And so as the supervisor, that's part of my job, is really helping to develop the staff that works with me, but I'm also learning from them as well. And so that's something that I can't stop doing. Like, I have to continue to learn, the industry, the best practices, what's coming up new, how can we see what's happening, and then, help add that into the department where, we're trying to live and breathe.
Hey, Jamey, the only time, I have to admit, the only time where that really did bother me was with the demographic report. and any RSRO. The demographic report was a beast, like a Johnson. We had part-time coaches. Like, I'm trying to figure stuff out. I mean, you could have like showed me the way a little bit.
But look at you now, telling me you do it all by yourself.
It was easy to do here. It was very easy, but you put me through the ringer. But you're spot on. I mean, I think about the experiences that I personally had with the supervisor, or whether it be a head coach, you as an administrator, whatever. Those experiences where I got the feedback or had to have the conversation. Those are the ones that I grew in the most. Where the ones where like you don't have that. And I think I've been listening this last week to a lot of podcasts on feedback and how to give them, how to take it and stuff like that. And I think that's where like people, from both ends, you get all worked up about it. But how are you going to get better at anything if you don't have that information to get better with? So like when you're, I like how Andy said, pulling somebody along. So when you're, whatever it is, when you have someone beneath you or below you, like if you're the head manager of a program, and there's other student managers that are under your guidance or wing, like, if you don't tell them they're doing something right or wrong, they'll never know. They'll never know. They'll never grow. They'll never get better. They'll never have that opportunity to move over to that next seat, what have you. So, and I love how all of you said that it's your responsibility as the supervisor to provide that to those that you lead.
I got one more question, I think, before we open it up to kind of general Q&A. But what are a couple of non-obvious questions that you would encourage coaches to ask during the interview process, and why do you think those are important? I don't want to start us off.
I'm not sure I'm coming up with a specific question right now, but if I'm interviewing, I mean, let's just stick with basketball right now. If I'm interviewing a basketball coach, yeah, we're going to interview with questions. We're going to get to know them as a person, and as a basketball coach. And when we turn it over to ask questions, I want them to ask questions about our students, about our campus. I really want to see again that they're invested in, and they want to be in this organization that we're hiring into. So I don't want it to get, they certainly, I expect them to ask questions specific to basketball, but I also want them to ask questions that are broader and more about the vision and where we're going and what our campus is like. And so I can get a sense of that they're really trying to picture how do they fit in and what can they contribute to.
I think one I'd throw to you guys that just happened recently. A friend of mine's going through a job opportunity, and he used this one, and I was like, I was mad I never thought about this. So he interviewed with a panel of people, and you know how you get to the part and it's like, all right, yeah, tell me about yourself, whatever. And like that would typically be like, okay, you tell me about yourself. Well, he actually threw it to the panel and said, I want you to tell me about the person to your right. And then I want you to tell me about what they add to in this place. And I was like, that is genius, because you will find out so fast, one, like how well did they know each other, those in the room? Two, what do they value about the person next to them? And then three, what do they think that they're bringing to the table that's building the organization? And so it's like in an instant, you'd be like, this dude is full of it. Like, he don't know what he's talking, like, or this is actually genuine friendship. And so they're like inviting you in, being like, we're a family, we're whatever. All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick. I was like, that was genius. So if you guys ever interview with the panel and they're like, oh yeah, tell me about yourself, do you have any questions for us? Like, throw it back on them and make them have to talk about each other, and then make them have to talk about each other in that place. I think is a really interesting way to do it.
Andy, he did that on the first pitch of the game, or like in the 8th inning? Like that was like, you know, when they, like the very first thing, that's what he did, or later?
So like it was like an interview. Yeah, they were interviewing him, and you know, they're like, "Do you have any questions for us?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, I want to get to know you guys, but I don't want to. I don't want you to tell me about you. I want the person that's next to you. You can't, like, basically he said, those that are in front of me, you can't tell me about you. The person to your right has to tell me about you. And then that person also, they need to tell, you know, your background, but then what you bring to this team and why, and what your hope is for them in the future." So he made it like a 3-part question. I thought it was genius. I was like, I'm writing that down.
But that was a question that they ask at the end of the interview, not at the beginning, because if you have a 30-minute interview and you ask that on the front end, you've lost your time to sell yourself. But that is a great question to ask at the end of the interview. I wrote that down, Andy Birdsong. One of the questions that I think would be a good one to ask is, if Jamey was interviewing me, I would ask Jamey, you've been doing this for how many years now, Jamey?
16.
So in the 16 years that you have been an athletic administrator, if I was to talk to all of the coaches who've ever worked with you, tell me 3 words you think that they would use to describe you. 3 adjectives, because I would really like to have a really good idea of the kind of manager and leader that you are. And I think that their perspective about who you are would be really good.
That's great. I know we've been here almost an hour and a half now, and no one's gotten kicked off due to their internet in a while. Let's just open it up to maybe like 10, 15 minutes, and just for some broader Q&A. If someone wants to dig deeper into a question or topic we've already gotten to, that's fine, or a new question for all 3 of the panelists or for one of them specifically. Would love to hear from some people we've not heard from yet tonight. That would be great. So the floor is open. Just unmute yourself and ask away.
I might jump in here, Jonah.
And sorry, can you also just introduce yourself and where you're from, and maybe the team you're affiliated with now?
Yeah, it's my name's Nick Griffin, and I most recently was with Fort Wayne Mad Ants as a video coordinator and assistant coach. First of all, thank you to the 3 of you for coming on and giving such great content. All of that was, you know, really insightful stuff. I'm going to be a little bit selfish here and ask, you know, maybe a little bit of a more filtered question towards my particular situation. But, you know, a lot of the advice has been great for head coaches and assistant coaches interviewing for jobs. I'm curious if the 3 of you have any advice for what Andy refers to as operators and executors who, you know, might not have as much experience or leverage going into an interview, and how you kind of differentiate yourself in the hiring process, whether that be trying to get an interview at the NBA level, or, you know, once you have an interview, trying to differentiate yourself from the candidate pool.
I think I appreciate the question. I think at the end of the day, it's still like the internships in the NBA more often than not are relationship driven, you know, and I know that's hard because it's like, well, how do I build my network? I don't know. Like, how do I get to know people? I think you're doing it right now. It's Friday night at 9:26 Eastern, and you're sitting on a professional development Zoom. Like, you're one of, how many people is this? 12? So there's 12 people right now that are doing what you're doing, and you're going to walk away from this with relationships that you didn't have before. Like, you just did what you need to be doing, in my personal view, is like, tend your own garden and something will grow. I promise. I really do mean that. Like, just keep putting down good soil and watering it and letting sun come on it, and like something positive will happen. Just keep doing it time after time after time. And I know, like, patience is one of the hardest things in the world. And I say that as a 34-year-old that people are like, oh yeah, you're making it. No, like I have to be patient. I have to tell myself that all the time, like patience, patience, patience. Like, and I think the other thing I would tell you is in a COVID environment, like the world's falling apart in certain ways. Like don't put too much pressure on yourself, literally. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that are going on, and it's like, you just like, it really puts a lot of stuff in perspective. So it's like, I don't know if I can get that job, or I don't know what's going to happen. Well, the whole world doesn't know what's going to happen. And so I think taking the time to invest in yourself, what you're doing right now, is an incredible thing, because you're going to walk away from it. You're going to be like, oh, okay, well, I got to spend time with Miss Allen. I got to spend time with Jamey. Like, you know what I mean? I'm building a network at C3 because of Jonah and those that are putting this on, that someday this is going to be impactful. I'm literally like, when we signed on, I was like, I cannot wait for 5 years from now to see what this thing is. Because I know that those involved in it care about it in a way that's going to grow it in an organic way. And that this is going to be, I mean, for those that know what Villa 7 is, Villa 7 started as something. Who knows what this could be? And so I just think that I would commend those that have taken the time to be here. It's 9:28 on a Friday night. You're sitting on a Zoom because you're trying to improve yourself. That's an unbelievable, commendable thing.
I think I really like what this is: continuous coaching collaborative. So I'll tell you, the people who I have taken a personal interest in are the ones who take a personal interest in me. I think it was Zig Ziglar who said that the best way to sell yourself is to sell others. Because if you could spend a whole year trying to get people to know who you are, and in 1 month, by elevating another person, they'll never forget who you are. How do you do that? You do that by making yourself available to the people that you would like to connect with. I have a number of different people. One of the things that really impressed me, I remember there was a young lady who was an intern for the Women's Basketball Coaches Association, and she volunteered for us when we hosted our symposium in Atlanta. The next year we were in Chicago. She drove from Atlanta to Chicago to be a volunteer. And I said, you know, we're not paying you. She was like, I know, I just want to help. I said, great, fantastic. We have these 25 things for you to do tomorrow. When it was time for her to get a job, I called Cynthia Cooper when she was at Southern Cal and said, I know you need a Dobo. I have the person you should hire. And she said, Felicia, has she ever been a Dobo before? I said, no, but she has every skill that a Dobo should possess. She can do this, 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 and this. Because she trusted me, she got that job. I have another young lady who I met when she was in high school at a booth. She played for Boo Williams. I'm sure y'all all know who Boo Williams is, for one of his programs. She was at Radford. She got injured. She was going into her senior year. Again, she reaches out to me. She's a stranger. She's like, I met you when I was in 10th grade and I know about your program. I would love to volunteer. I'll drive from Radford to Charlotte to volunteer. Okay, great, fantastic. You know we don't pay you. She's like, yeah, I know. She's been volunteering ever since. When it was time for her to get a job, she first got a graduate assistantship. After the graduate assistantship, a job came open at a Power 5 school. My client was the person who was going to be making the decision. I said, I got the perfect person for you. Has she ever done that job before, Felicia? No. But let me tell you how I know she can do it. I think you have to make yourself available because there's so many other skills that you will be able to learn as a result of volunteering. I think it was Eric Spoelstra who I was so impressed when they showed him when he won the NBA championship, when they kind of like went back down memory lane and where he started. It was being able to operate and demonstrate a level of humility right now where you sit today, Nick, is what is going to serve as a catalyst for where you could sit 10 years from now. So it starts with you being willing to do what nobody else wants to do. You hear people say this stuff all the time, be willing to do what nobody else is willing to do. It sounds good until you're the one that's doing what nobody else wants to do. But in the process of doing that, you get to learn from the bottom up how to be a leader.
I don't know I can add too much more to that. That was so well put. And I think Andy also touched on patience, right? You know, don't be in such a hurry to get to that next spot to the next spot. I mean, think about your goals, think about where you want to be, pay attention to, you know, what are the characteristics, the skill set, the traits that you have to develop to get that position. I remember somebody told me, one of my mentors told me when I was just starting out, you know, what is that job you want, like right now? And again, things change as you get older and go through your career. But he said, find that job, figure out all the things that they're looking for in that job, and you work to establish, to build that in yourself. So when that job opens up 3, 4, 5, whatever, how many years it is from now, you have that. You'll be ready for that job. And so the patience comes in because you want to get to that end spot. But as Felicia said, I mean, you got to put that time in and be willing to do so. I mean, I remember my first gig in college athletics was an assistant position full-time, and it paid $10,000. I didn't even pay my bills, right? And they hired 6 of us at the same time. And some of the coaches, assistant coaches that were hired in, they had that attitude of, they're only paying me $10,000. I'm not gonna break my back. And then there was a few of us that were saying, hey, I want to be a head coach. I need to learn how to do all of these things. So pile it on, give it to me so I know. And so when the time is there, you will be ready. My first year, I mean, I applied for a head coaching position that paid 4 times that. And I turned the job down because I didn't think I learned everything I needed. And it was great that they offered me that job. So I obviously learned enough where they felt I was ready. I didn't feel I was ready. I still needed to learn a little bit more on this piece and this piece. And so, you know, make sure the environment that you're in, that you're really learning and soaking that up. Don't take that for advantage.
Thank you guys. Those were all great answers. I appreciate that.
Let's get two more questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Hey, you guys, I just was talking about being transparent. I have not had dinner tonight. Every restaurant in Rock Hill, South Carolina closes at 10.
Oh, go eat.
That I have 5 minutes because I need to order it. And then it's only it ain't that big of a city, so I can get there in less than 10 minutes. But I got 5 minutes, and then I need to make sure that I feed myself and my husband.
I can't have Johnny mad at me. I've got a quick one, actually, if nobody is going to jump in. I'm just curious, especially with the times that we're living in right now. How are you guys building in procedures and protocols or processes to diversify your organizations? So that kind of goes towards Jamey and Andy. And then Felicia, how are you, like with the search firms that you work with or your clients, how are you like getting them to, I don't want to say take this seriously, but work to diversify their candidate pools, and or with your clients, preparing them to be able to deal with this in this new world of coaching that we're going to have to be equipped to move forward in?
If you guys don't mind, Andy and Jamey, I'll answer and then I'll transition if that's okay with the both of you. Relative to diversifying, we are living in an age, I mean, we have 2 pandemics going on. One that's obvious, COVID. The other is one that you can choose to acknowledge or not. But I think after the modern day lynching of George Floyd, it made it really difficult not to pay attention to this current state of America. So when you start to think about diversifying, I think that it is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that a lot of people are paying attention. You're going to be in a position now where you have to demonstrate that you have the capacity to interact, engage, and to create a safe place for everybody that you interact with, that you can value and respect differences and people's choices. I think the other thing that is really important for me is that COVID has made it easier for me to get to know decision makers. Like this past year, for our next level program, we had 11 executive search firms, 11, from Daniel Parker to Bill Carr. I mean, like when I say we had all of the big boys, we had them all. And we had 60 coaches that were able to spend one-on-one time with them. We had 4 rounds of 15-minute like sessions. You couldn't pay to be that close to Gene DeFilippo, who used to be the AD at Boston College. You couldn't pay to be that close to Bill Carr. I mean, like it was just absolutely incredible. I think that this period has created access to people that would have never existed before. But I'll tell you something that one of my law professors taught me. He said, there's this C word. It's called consideration. It's a lost art in today's world. If you can demonstrate the capacity to consider another, then you can create an opportunity to be remembered. Something as small as a handwritten note can go a really long way. Why do you say that? Because we get emails and text messages and phone calls all the time, but you don't receive a lot of handwritten notes. Chances are you remember right now the last time you got one. And if you can remember the last time you got one, you can remember who wrote it. There is a tremendous opportunity right now before you to practice the art of consideration. And that will be one of the things that will allow you to be remembered.
Felicia, thank you so much. Go eat. Go eat.
Yeah, since I can't say go Cowboys, I need to just.
Don't worry, you play my Giants one more time. That'll be a W.
Oh, God, and we desperately need it. You all have a fantastic evening. I look forward to being in touch. Andy and Jamey, I will be intentional about reaching out. Tommy, thank you for this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And Jonah, thanks for allowing me to enter the session. I tricked y'all sometime and I treated you other times tonight, but it was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia.
Andy and Jamey, I don't know if either of you want to piggyback on what she talked about.
I think the only thing I would add, like for me personally, it's been a time of just like understanding and realizing and admitting like you don't know what you don't know. And I think that being able to be vulnerable with the staff and be vulnerable with people about that in the current social environment is like, it's how I've chosen to live. It's basically like, look, like I want to be the best ally I can be. And just as I said, you know, living life in threes and creating pathway, like there's real practical opportunity to live that out. And, you know, organizationally, we're looking at, you know, we're going to be a partner with an HBCU this year, and with a classroom with young, you know, people that want to work in sports. And we're going to be a part of we're going to do the work there. I think we're going to try and, you know, develop as many relationships. When I talked about broadening my network or broadening my circle of understanding so that when positions come available and all that, like I am going to be intentional on going to places where those that may not have had opportunity in the past can create opportunity going forward. I think it's a time where listening is at an all-time high, but not listening just with your ears, but like listening with your heart and then walking it out beyond that. I think you have to be intentional about that. I think you like what you say you care about and then what your actions do behind that. Like that's where integrity comes into play. And I think that's something for me personally and organizationally that we are embracing wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and you know, on the college campus right now, and you know, I'm working in northern Vermont. I mean, we're if not the whitest, the second whitest state in the country, right? And you know, I'll be the first to admit we have to listen. We have a lot to learn, but in the person in a leadership role, I have to continue. I have to keep educating myself. And we have a small percentage by overall. I think 10% of our students are students of color, right? We have to be able to have those conversations. We have to listen to our students. I mean, you might have been the only person of color on our campus when I hired you. Maybe one other, right? And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but when you brought in your first recruiting class, you brought in a lot of students from inner cities, and I remember going to our dean of students at that time and saying, hey, I just want to let you know that Tommy has this great recruiting class coming in, but I don't think our campus is ready. And so I pleaded with him that we need to start doing educational sessions with our staff, with our faculty. And what came out of that is we started a diversity and inclusion task force on our campus. And that is continuing to grow and evolve on our campus. But I will say that it wasn't, unfortunately, it took that brutal killing of George Floyd for our campus to really step back and observe and say, we're saying things, but we're not doing things. We're not putting action to what we're saying. You know, we're for sure, we're throwing a diversity statement on our website and we're doing, but are we really living it? Are we really, no, we weren't. And that's something that in these last 6 months, I've realized I am in a position of power that I can help make sure that we are doing what we can do. And it is, as Andy said, we are walking it. We are, and so we're, you know, that's my responsibility and it's our campus's responsibility. We now are working on having equity advocates for every search hire, whether it's faculty, staff, every position that we're hiring on campus now. We're training equity advocates to be a part of each search committee to make sure they're asking the search committee the right questions, getting the search committee to think about how do we get the most diverse candidate pool. And so that's for example, one thing that we've started to do. And it's, you know, we got to have those constant conversations. I mean, we have them in athletics all the time. And all of you know, right? Athletics we're often leaders in a lot of different areas and a lot of different topics, and certainly diversity is one of them. And so I think we can be leaders in our campus, leaders in our organization, and just remember, listen.
Jamey and Andy, thanks so much for being on, and I appreciate Jonah hosting this. This is awesome. Just a question here. In the job interview process, how important is it to evaluate how compelled a person is to take the job, and how do you vet that out in the interview process?
I take it head on. I ask you, if offered, would you take it before we offer? That, I mean, I was taught that early, like literally, be like, if offered, would you take the job? And then you, like, sometimes if they pause and then they say, well, if the finances were right, okay, cool, let's have that conversation now. So before I offer it, I know what I can offer you. And so I'd take it head on.
I echo that, Andy. I'm the same way. I'd rather know, you know, the sooner I can know the things that might be hangups for the candidate, the better, right? I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my committee's time, my time. And so head on, in my mind, is the only way to do it. And so, you know, I'm asking the same thing. If you were offered this, are you going to take it? From when we get to selecting who our, you know, semifinalists are that we're going to do Zoom interviews with or whatever, I'm calling them and saying, okay, here's the salary, you know, here's, you know, what it is. I want to make sure I lay all of that out so that candidate or the candidates have that opportunity to think about it, like, okay, you know, and I think the search committees that I put together, they'll also add, you know, like, what do you know about Northern Vermont? You know, it seems like every place you've been has been in a you know, urban setting, and we're very rural. Like, we're just trying to make sure that the candidates are really thinking about, because you kind of can get caught up in the job and the process, and then all of a sudden you get offered the job, and now you start to think like, oh, I wonder how much it costs to live there. I wonder, you know, where I can rent. I wonder what you know, do they have big box stores or restaurants, or are they just, you know, mom and pop shops? And so, you know, I'm like Andy, we're just straight out and start to ask those questions to dig into it.
Thanks so much. I have one more, if you don't mind, Jonah. So obviously jobs open up for various reasons. Some open up because a guy got a bigger job, maybe in college or NBA, or, you know, some jobs get open because coaches get fired because of performance or whatever. How important is it to evaluate the fixed mindset versus growth mindset? As in, if a coach is taking the job just to keep the engine running, or taking a job to grow with the job to make it a better job?
It's the whole game for me, but like that's like, I mean, it's a massive part of our evaluation is like, why do you want to be here? Why do you want to be here? And what are you going to do while you're here? And how are you going to attack the challenges that come your way? You know, fixed mindset versus growth mindset, like that's a lifestyle. And so I think understanding that and being able to put that into practice is a massive thing. So for me and for us personally, I mean, it's a finite group of people that we would take a fixed mindset coach or a fixed mindset person into our organization and allow them. They better be tactically and technically so elite that it makes up for a lot of other things.
Thank you.
I'll just add, I mean, I agree with that. At the same time, I think I said way back earlier in this conversation, like I don't expect coaches that I hired to retire where we are. We're not that type of institution, and that's okay. We understand that, right? So we always talk about, hey, if we bring someone in, we want to make sure that when they leave, and that could be in, you know, 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, they leave that program in a better spot than what they found it. And if we can get that, pry at that, then we might take a chance on you. I mean, obviously we want, I'll give you a perfect example. We're hiring a softball coach right now, and probably 20 minutes before I got on this call, we got the feedback from the players that met with both coaches. And I always ask for pros and cons. And one of the cons was one of the candidates had been, the last 3 jobs they've had been either 1 year or 2 years. And the players said, worried about that. That's a con. Because if you don't have that stability and consistency, it is going to be hard to grow the program to where you want to be. So, you know, we're figuring that out. But if I have a really good candidate that I know they can, you know, invest 2 years and build that program to the next level, we might consider taking a chance depending on who the other candidates are in the pool.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time tonight.
Hey, Jamey, I just wanted to say that Northern Vermont costs a whole lot when you're living out of a U-Haul for about 4 weeks like I was. I have to, that was wild. I have to share that story with people, but that really happened. You can vouch for that too. I was getting my work clothes every day off the truck.
Yes, you were.
Clay, I know you guys just got out of practice, so we're about to close up, but hang on. Thanks for showing up. We'll catch up for a little bit after this. But thank you everyone for participating tonight. Andy, Felicia, and Jamey, thank you again just for sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. And everyone else, thank you for making the session really engaging. I'll send out the link to the video from tonight in the next few days, as well as a contact list. So people that are not here with us live will be able to view it. And everyone have a happy and safe Halloween. Make sure to dress up as a C3 logo or any other good costume, and just enjoy your family. And
I'm going as my coffee cup. I'm going as the coffee cup. How about that? You know, they could put candy in it.
and that's the limit for the candy.
Jonah, just a couple of things. Jonah, thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed tonight. For everyone that participated, honestly, you can reach out to me with any questions that you have at any time. I mean, I'm willing to help. I mean, I'll look at a cover letter for you. If you want to call and talk to me about an interview process because you got an interview coming up, please use me. Tommy, thanks for the introduction. I think you added some embellishments there, but it was a pleasure working with you.
Hey,
and
listen,
one last thing, Trey, I just know it's good to see you, Trey.
You too,
Hope you're doing well.
I'm
Hey,
doing well,
Jamey,
man. I hope you're
I owed you that because you never got too upset with me if I got a couple extra technical files. So I definitely owed you that. But folks, I kid you not, if you have a cover letter or you're trying to do a resume, you send it to Jamey. Full disclosure, Jamey, we'll make sure this part doesn't get out. But Jonah, you read the cover letter that he wrote. It's unbelievable. He's a knack at this. One day he's going to have his own consulting firm. We're working on that now. But Jamey, thank you so much. And Andy as well. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us this evening. Sorry,
Yeah,
Jamey.
Andy, it was great to meet you and learn from you as well. And that's another great thing. I mean, I was fortunate to be on the panel, but you know, I'm taking a lot away from tonight as well. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah, and guys, like as I said it earlier, like I can't say how cool it is that you guys have taken 2 hours out of a Friday night to come on and learn from each other. I think I have a firm belief in life that life is better together. And I think these are how you start making those connections. And I think as you do that, you'll find that, you know, it's live life in threes, invest in one another, and, you know, just try to stay on the right path together. And we're going to be able to achieve and change a lot within this industry. I truthfully believe that.
Andy, we would have been here a lot longer, but Jamey held me to a time limit. So I told him we've gone 6 hours before. He's like, I can't do that.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks,
Thank you,
Jamey.
guys.